Welcome to the April 14th, 2025 meeting of the Easton Planning and Zoning Board. The procedures for remote participation are on the second page of the agenda. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded on ECAT. Excuse me. To use Zoom, you will need to use the link on the agenda or download the Zoom application and create an account. You'll need the webinar ID to join by phone only. While conducting remote meetings, we'll endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to standard procedures as possible. However, use of the remote platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While board members and commissioners and applicants will be on video and audio invited to speak by the chair, public participants joining by Zoom will be muted and with no video feed from them. Public lines will be muted throughout the meeting. For general meetings, not public hearings, and only for items under which the chair solicits public comment, members of the public participating in the Zoom meeting may submit a written question via text chat, provided they include their full name and address for the record. Members of the viewing public may submit questions in writing via email to dped@easton.ma.us. The chair reserves the right to respond to questions during a live meeting, but may limit the time for such activities. Any questions not addressed in the meeting may be answered afterwards via email and will be incorporated into the minutes of the meeting for the public record. All votes will be by roll call. For public hearings, during the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public joining via Zoom may be recognized by using the raise hand function found under participants from Zoom, or make a request with the Q&A function. If you're joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. The chair reserves the right to designate a specific point of the hearing at which testimony may be offered. As in any public hearing, testimony offered must be related to the hearing being held, and off-topic commentary will not be tolerated. When all business indicated on the agenda has been completed, the members will vote to adjourn the meeting, signaling the end of the meeting. And with that, I am going to call a roll call to start the meeting. Weeks.
Here.
Zigman.
Sorry about that. Here.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
And Stetson is here as well. So the first item on the agenda, Stephanie, is the permitting audit with Wayne Fiden. Is that where we're going to start tonight?
Yes.
Okay, great.
So I am promoting Wayne right now. I have mentioned to the board in the past that we are in the process of conducting an audit of all the permitting processes associated with what I call development permitting. So permitting that results or ends in new development in town or new businesses opening up. And we've contracted with the Center for Resilient Metro Regions at the University of Massachusetts. And Wayne Frieden is the, Frieden, mispronounced it, is the consultant that we're working with. And I don't want to steal his thunder, so I would like to introduce you to him to you.
Thank you. Thanks all for having me. Joanne, I know from a previous project. I don't think I've met any of the rest of you. So as Stephanie said, the Center for Resilient Metro Regions, we're an arm of UMass, and our goal is to help municipalities and sort of grow planning practice around the state. So this project fits very much what we're interested in, is, promoting economic development. Our mission for this project, I think, is what Stephanie's trying to get is, so we're looking at your whole regulatory process from regulations to information that's available online to the permitized process. And our goal is to look for opportunities where we can streamline or speed up the process. But our given for this whole thing is we're not doing anything that undermines the protections that you all work to get in there. So this isn't a matter of weakening regulations. It's a matter of looking at processes and making things as clear as possible. So, we've been going through all those documents. We just met earlier this week. I lose track of time, but or last week, I guess, with Stephanie and other department heads to understand their view of the process. So we're still doing an assessment. I really basically want to come to you all just to give you a chance to share ideas with me on things that we can do for the process. So I don't have a presentation for you, really just information gathering, but I'll give you examples of what I'm interested in. So you have a wonderful permit tracking system, Permit Eyes, which is really good. One of the questions for you all is, when you look at applications, are there other things that you wish people would provide you for information in the process? So, you know, are there questions you wish the form would have? You allow a lot of open-ended information. Some can put a narrative that's, you know, short or long. There are other questions you want to force them. Does your work with the stormwater process, which is probably the most time-consuming part of permit review, does that work from your standpoint? If not, what does it need? Are there sections of the zoning that aren't clear? If you're an applicant who didn't know what you were doing, you know, for example, the signage section and the lighting section, from my outside eyes, are not as clear as some towns could be. Are there other things which you wish you had, or anything else in there? So it's really an open-ended question for you all.
Well, thank you for joining us. I mean, there certainly signage is one that you honed in on, I think correctly. And I know that Amos has brought that up a number of times, and I quite agree that could merit some both clarification as well as some streamlining as well. I'm not at all convinced that it needs to be something that's brought up to the board during a meeting. You know, but I welcome everyone's thoughts. I mean, and especially Stephanie's when it comes to these matters, because she's the one that her and Suzanne are really doing the grunt work here and all the labor and making sure that we get everything we need to have in our hands, you know, for our review and analysis. So I don't know, Stephanie, do you have any additional thoughts?
Well, we've been talking, so I've had a couple of conversations now with Wayne, both as kind of the kickoff for this project, but then also we kind of did a wrap up from the stakeholder meeting that we had last week. The signs was one that came up. We talked about A&R. I had suggested A&Rs and had actually gone to town council to see if that's something that the board could turn over as an administrative review and approval. He didn't give me a real definitive answer. So that was something I'd mentioned to Wayne. And not that we get a lot of those, it's just that they require coming to a meeting. And it's more time that the board is spending on something that's generally pretty straightforward. Just like the signs. Stormwater we've talked about some of the challenges and why they often go back and forth many times during the permitting process. And I think it gets frustrating on both sides as to why that is. I think from our perspective, we feel that the project needs to come to us with their stormwater design more fully completed. And that's an example. And Wayne's talked about having kind of a covenant with the applicants. And I hadn't mentioned this, Wayne, although it's popped up in my head a couple of times. And when we first spoke, I may have mentioned it. So years ago, when they were, the town was having the wetlands delineated for the Queeset Commercial District. We captured all that wetland information. We actually told people, if you allow us onto your property, we'll delineate your wetlands for you. They'll be valid for X number of years. And then if you ever have a project within that time period, I think we said like 10 years. if you have a project that's going to move forward, we will give you the information that we have, because we had a wetland scientist go out there and delineate, and those were all approved by the Conservation Commission. So that was a way we had hoped to help spark additional growth, quite frankly, Bob. No one ever really took us up on it, but I don't think it's a bad idea to do something like that. But that's on the stormwater side. If we go over with them, and they know, they have the stormwater management guidebook that is published by the state, but if they come fully engineered to the town, it will still need to be reviewed, but we can promise you that if everything's there, it can go smoother. And, you know, I think Wayne probably has some ideas on how this would actually be kind of written out and presented to the applicants, but I think those would be really helpful. You know, we might, and Wayne, I'm just, again, thinking off the top of my head, maybe what we do in the office side is have kind of a training session for folks, or a review process where we go through that with the engineers who do most of the projects in town.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, the thing that Stephanie mentioned about covenant, which I think you're sort of already doing an implied covenant, is basically just saying, at least at the staff level, and I assume it's true at the board level, you probably spend an inordinate amount of time on applications that aren't really ready for prime time. And that's unfair for the people who are ready for prime time. So, you know, what's the process to catch the incomplete applications and kick them out and say, come back when you're ready? And then the good side from a developer standpoint, from a property owner standpoint, is the covenant is when you're ready, then the boards aren't so busy on those bad projects, and you're going to move heaven and earth to move those projects through quickly in the process. And some of those I think you do informally. There are ways to formalize that process. So literally, like, you know, major projects generally want to meet with staff ahead of time. And usually want to do that. They don't want to waste money on design before they go forward, but they're not required to. And so some towns actually have a higher fee, an application fee, if you don't meet with staff. The same theory is it's taking more staff time and more board time to review something if it didn't get a chance to be reviewed by fire and DPW, et cetera. So those are the kind of options we're going to try to give you. You know, it's not my job to tell you what changes you make. It's my job to give you a bunch of options, and then at some future date, you guys figure out how do you want to go forward in those things.
And I guess I'd really like to hear from the board, but there's no pride of ownership here, or so if there's something you feel staff is doing that you think could be done better, more efficiently, please feel free to, there will be no hurt feelings here.
I would like to point out that it will be helpful, and this can come from you, Stephanie, to have a list of the main issues that are quantified somehow based on our experience of how much effort and time they take, and just point out what these obstacles are. I know about the signage, for example, and I suggested that we should go electronic, and that will really make a big difference. But maybe there are others, and it would be good to have a number. I think was a prominent statistician named John Tackett that said, if you cannot give me a number, it's not worth talking about. It's a saying, but I think it's important. If you are not based on data and you cannot prioritize what are the most important issues to attack, I think we should do it that way. Then there might be some that are less important and more difficult to implement or resolve, but we should attack the ones that are the most prominent, the ones that are the big ones.
Mm-hmm. And I think we vocalized those, but we can certainly put them in writing, Wayne, if that
Yeah, the other one is you can do it with software too, but you can meet with someone, but before you meet, you give this developer the list of the things that you are going to require, uh, with sub explanations about each one of those items, what can be done in order to expedite. And one thing for sure, we need to make sure that all the people that are applying, they know how to work with Zoom, and we don't have all these problems we have with people. I don't know how to bring this to the screen or not, or yes. We need to do something about that. That is a waste and an inefficiency that we can resolve.
And that's actually, the last two things you said are things that have actually come up, like having a really thorough checklist for each of kind of the various types of reviews, and make sure that those are being distributed and they're readily available online. We're sending them out when we first get approached about a project and someone's expressing interest. I do that verbally, I do it in an email, but to have a checklist that we can hand back and say, here are all the steps in the process. Tonight, I took the time, in part because we're going through this whole process, so it's really front of mind for me. But I had received an email from someone who is interested in a project for a certain parcel of land, and they wanted to know very specifically, what's involved, what are the permits, how much time is spent and everything. So I put it in a narrative form, but it's a narrative that can easily be translated into a checklist.
Hearing this actually, I'm kind of maybe want to throw something back at Wayne, which is, you want to be competitive, or at least that's what I think myself certainly wants to accomplish when it comes to zoning and processes. And I guess I would be interested, Wayne, now having spoken with our staff a couple of times, and hopefully you've had some opportunity to look through, the way that we do things here. Is there a dramatic difference between the way that we're processing certain types of projects? I mean, larger projects in particular, because that's going to be the most time consuming, and the way that, other towns, in our area are doing it. Because I think one of the things that I'm interested to know is, are other towns that are perhaps spurring more development than us, are they streamlining things in a way that's noticeable to applicants and developers? And is that attracting, additional projects to their towns?
So really good question, and we still need to do more research to answer that, so I can't really answer it now. But I
Sure.
will say two things. At the overall level, no, I think you guys are doing a really good job. And I sometimes joke about this of, if you get an A minus, the question of, is A minus, I teach, so I think in grades, but if you get A minus, is A minus good enough? And do you want to walk away from that? Or do you want to sort of strive for more? So I think you're a leader of the pack, and I don't see anything major that's broken. I do see opportunities to make improvements. And Mr. Keaton, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but I totally agree that you want to think about the big opportunities that are out there. But I also think science is just low-hanging fruit that's worth doing because it's so easy to do. The biggest unknown in terms of your question is, you all hear, and I'm sure staff hears, when someone doesn't like something of the permit process, I'm sure they complain loud. But what you don't know is there's some number of investors who are looking at opportunities generally in your area, and you just don't know when they walk away. They look at your regulations and say, I don't want to go there, I want to go somewhere else. So I don't think we ever can really have that information. We know that special permits are really important in some cases, because there's some projects that you want to have under some circumstances, and some projects you don't want. But we also know that the regulated community is petrified of special permits. Even if you told me that you always grant them, they just don't know first if you're going to grant them. And second, in this litigious environment, even if you grant them by unanimous vote, is some unhappy neighbor going to appeal it and keep them in court for years? So certainly one of the things we'll be doing is looking at all the places you require a special permit. Again, not suggesting you change it, but just at least think about it. So that's one of the places that signs showed up is, if someone's going to put, I think a good example, I don't even know what your standards are, but some places allow funeral homes in residential neighborhoods. Well, if you did, again, I don't know if you do, you'd want to look at that case by case because you wouldn't want a funeral home in a place that couldn't take the traffic of people lining up on the street. So that would make sense as a special permit. But for a sign, you really should be able to come up with a cookbook standard that doesn't require a special permit. Ban the things you don't want, allow the things you do want. So that's the kind of analysis, and that's the thing I'd be most worried about if you're requiring a special permit for something you shouldn't be requiring it for.
Glad to hear you raise that because this discussion actually echoes. We had hired a consultant a number of years ago. I guess it was before the pandemic now, to take a look at our special permit process and to help us revise and revamp aspects of our zoning. And one of the discussions that we had back then was how much should we be relying on special permit versus putting into place a more detailed set of regulations, but doing certain things by right, or relying a little bit more on doing things by right. And so, I would love to know, and I take your point, Wayne, that you're never going to know what you don't know, certainly. But what I would love to know is if we're doing something that is different, and I know you don't know this yet, but are we doing something different in terms of development than other towns in our area? Because we are very reliant on special permit. I don't think that's a secret, and I think that in some instances maybe it's problematic, maybe it's not. But I definitely would be interested after you have gone through your review process to know what you think.
Okay, fair enough, definitely. I will add to relate to this conversation before I leave it that one of the things that's changed over the last 2 decades, this isn't new, is communities are putting more and more into site plan approval. And even though site plan approval still comes before the board, that doesn't scare a developer because if it gets appealed, it might go to court, it might delay a project 6 months, but it's not that sort of 4-year delay that petrifies developers. And so as site plan in essence becomes a more powerful tool, sometimes it makes it easier not to require a special permit because a lot of what you're probably looking at for special permit are things you could look at for site plan. So as part of that, looking at precedents, I'll look at that issue as well.
Right.
I have a question for you. Granted that you cannot know those that decided not to come to Easton to do development, but we can definitely send an inquiry to the developers that have worked in Easton and ask them what they think it can be better or different. Is that something you would recommend to do? We have their information. We can send a questionnaire and ask for their opinion too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something I think you should always do. Some towns do an annual calling of businesses, and certainly I'll talk to Stephanie, but if there are a few land use attorneys in your area who might be the one shepherding through, I'm happy to call directly and interview them if they're willing to talk to me.
Wayne, are you also going to be looking at the technology side of things as well and opportunities for trying to, okay.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, I've been impressed by Permit Eyes. It lacks some things, collaborative plan review you don't have on there. So yes, I'll be looking at that.
I sent an email to Bob and Stephanie about the urgent need to at least talk about DocuSign or any other system that allows you to sign and approve documents electronically with revision control, with all the things that come attached to those software packages. I don't know how much it costs. I don't know if we don't have it because the town cannot afford them. But I am sure that the town as a whole, for other departments as well, can definitely use electronic approval. I am convinced of that. I'm a retired engineer, and for decades, we are doing electronic approval of designs, for example, and it streamline, make it more formal, and make it a lot better. And it's time to bring this down to the 21st century.
And that was something that I believe we talked about, Wayne.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, I think,
Was the
you know,
whole signature process and because that does put a delay. Whether sometimes it's maybe just a few days, sometimes it's a few weeks.
yeah, in some ways, that's what I was saying about low-hanging fruit. And maybe the few days isn't a huge thing, but yes, totally agree. It's an easy thing to solve. So yeah, or I think we're gonna look at technology across the board. Again, as I say, from what I've seen, both your online GIS and your online permitting, you're probably ahead of the pack there, but there's still some more opportunities.
Anyone else?
I just
Hearing-
oh,
Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
all I wanted to say is that I'll support anything that makes it easier for Stephanie and for Suzanne especially. They work really hard. And if we can make the processes more efficient and effective all around, I'm totally in support of it. So thank you for starting this process.
And now, you know, obviously, as you think of things going forward, let Stephanie know and she'll reach out to me. And as we come up with drafts, I'll be sending to Stephanie. I'm sure she'll be sharing things with you. So.
Wonderful. Well, Wayne, thank you very much for your presentation, and we look forward to working with you.
Right. Likewise. Thank you so much. Good
Have a
night.
great night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, we are opening a public hearing on 35 Pequannocket Avenue, special permit, duplex dwelling, JA and JP Realty of Stoughton. Mickey?
All right. The Town of Easton notice of public hearing in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 40A, Section 9 and Section 11. The Easton Planning and Zoning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, April 14th, 2025, to be held remotely via Zoom on the application received from JA and JP Realty of Stoughton LLC for a special permit duplex dwelling under Easton Code Chapter 235. Zoning 235-56 special permits and appendix A-1 table of use regulations A2 to allow the construction of a duplex dwelling located at 35 to 37 Pequannocket Avenue, Easton, Mass, Assessor's Map 10R, Lot 34A. The meeting will be conducted remotely via Zoom. The agenda with the meeting link will be posted 48 hours in advance of the meeting. A copy of the plan and application may be viewed on the town website. This notice is also available at www.masspublicnotices.org.
Mickey? All
And
right.
Bob, if I may
Yes.
ask Mr. Jacobs, I promoted him and Joe Proya, who I know is the project proponent. If there's anyone else on your side, just please let me know.
No, that's
That's
it,
here
just
tonight.
us, Stephanie.
Okay.
All right. Well,
Thank you,
thank you,
Bob.
Mr. Jacobs. The floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. That was a very interesting meeting you guys had with Wayne. I thought that was great. And hopefully something will come of that. I'm here before you tonight. I'm Ed Jacobs, PMP Consulting, Inc. And I'm here before you tonight. Special permit request for 3537 Pequannocket. I'm representing JAJP Realty of Stoughton. This is for a special permit for duplex. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the site. See if I can find this plan. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is 3537 Pequannocket. There's an existing building on there now, home on there now that's, in disrepair, dilapidated. Demolition had been started. And we have been to the Historical Commission, and on March 25th, they determined that the house isn't perfectly preserved subject to conditions. And the conditions were basically that we show certain materials on the architectural plans, which we have done. We sent the revised plans over to Wayne at the Historical Commission, and they gave it their approval. So we have the approval from the Historical Commission. This will be a duplex, as you can see, paved driveway going up the right side, and along the back. Each unit will have a one-car garage underneath. As I said, that's all paved. There's a paved walkway going in across the front and into entrances in the front of the building as well. I could share the architectural plans if you guys want to see the elevations.
That would be great.
Okay, this might take me a second. Let's see. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what the front of the building would look like. As you can see, there's a covered porch, 2 entrances in the front. This would be the side, that would be the right side, the left side. Looking at it, this would be the front, the covered porch. There's a little apron over the garage doors in the back. There's a view of the rear garage doors. Some of the specifications that the Historical Commission wanted, the siding will be hardy plank. The windows are 6 panels on top over 1 panel on the bottom. Architectural shingles, all the trim is PVC vinyl. That's pretty much it as far as that goes. I can take any questions if you want.
All right. Thank you. Stephanie?
So the board will remember that a project had come before them to restore the existing structure to preserve it as a duplex. So it was previously approved as a duplex. Unfortunately, that didn't move forward as was expected. The current structure, as Mr. Jacobs pointed out, is in a state of disrepair. It is a bit of a hazard at this point. And the proposal before you tonight is a duplex, so it'll provide 2 additional units of housing, which is much needed in Easton. Both Mr. Jacobs and Mr. Proya, who is the project proponent, met with me and Wayne and talked about the design. Originally, Mr. Proya presented a design that, while very fine and looked great, it just didn't look like anything like the duplexes that were there. And some of these, we believe this was old worker housing, or we know it was worker housing associated with the forge that was located on Paquantucket Avenue, and some of them still exist. So we were really looking, and the Historical Commission was looking for something that looked a little bit more like the type of duplex that was there. And the design that you see before you tonight is a new design that was developed in response to those comments. And it was reviewed by the Historical Commission. And as Mr. Jacobs pointed out, what the Historical Commission wanted to see in materials is all being accommodated. Let's see, we have a single driveway entrance. Each unit will have its own garage, as Mr. Jacobs pointed out. The neighborhood is primarily single-family homes, But again, this previously existed as a residential duplex, and the residential duplex is not out of character with what exists there. There are still a couple of those duplexes left. Because it is rebuilding or building a new structure where a structure existed, there's really no additional environmental disturbance that will be taking place. And I think that's it. The criteria that the Historical Commission made has been addressed. I did have, my last comment was, they have not provided a landscaping plan, and I feel like one should be provided for this.
Okay. Did you, Stephanie, did you say that we had previously approved this for a duplex?
You will recall that this came forward as a project 4 years ago, I think,
I
to the
do.
board.
Yeah. Okay. Now, have you, I mean, is in terms of the design, or at least the exterior design that was previously approved, is it, I mean, obviously with historic looking at it and giving it a thumbs up, I assume the answer to the following question is yes, but is it similar to what we had looked at before?
It is similar. What was looked at before was restoration and reuse. So the property had been used as a duplex and it had been vacated for more than 2 years. So that use, because now this is a residential district that requires a special permit for a 2-family or a duplex, it needed to come back to the board for a new permit. So what they were proposing at the time was to restore the exterior. And they were raising up the roof, putting a dormer. I'm not saying it quite right. But lifting the back up as like a dormer addition. So there
Yeah.
would be more room within the building itself. But pretty much retaining the exterior and the footprint of the building. So it would look like what it did. Again, what happened, there was more extensive demolition than what had been permitted both under the special permit and what was expected through the Historical Commission when they reviewed it. So it sat, and the property has changed hands, and the design isn't an exact replica of what was previously there, but the Historical Commission felt it was consistent with that, kind of the look of the historic structure.
Mm-hmm.
And Mickey is a member of the Historical Commission, so if she wants to comment, I would be happy to have her add more to that.
I am just sitting here nodding along because you represented it well. It was a good meeting on the 25th. There was a lot of discussion and great feedback. It's exciting to see all of the criteria kind of presented was incorporated. And I will just comment, I do love the little window in the top middle. That was one of the things that was suggested. And I will say, Tim, the chair of the historical, was right. It does add a bit of kind of centering it. So well done on all of it. It was a great meeting on the 25th, and it's good to see the plans here.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mickey. Any other board members? Questions from Mr. Jacobs?
I just have one question. I noticed in Stephanie's report that it mentioned that there was an issue with the septic, or it needed to be larger than what was proposed. Do you know if that was resolved, Stephanie?
Well, so let's ask the applicant that, because they won't be able to move forward with the project if the septic system isn't sized properly. The Board of Health will need to issue that, but maybe Mr. Jacobs can respond to that.
Yes. So it had to do with the size of the tank. The duplex requires a 2,000-gallon 2-compartment tank. We did not show that on the plan. That was an oversight on our part. That will be revised before it goes into the Board of Health.
Great.
And so Joanne, that's a good point because the plan should be revised as well for our files. And we should get the final plan that's going to the Board of Health.
Yeah, we'll make sure you have that as well.
So Ed, I just want to be really clear that that would be before we issue before the board issues the special permit, we should have that revised plan in hand.
Yeah, I believe we've already made the changes, so I'll get that over to you tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
One quick question, is the foundation the same as the original? Is it being built up on the same footprint?
No.
Okay.
No. It's actually a little bit larger. You can see on the plan, the existing foundations under here.
Oh, yeah, I do see a ghost there. Okay.
So it's just in this general idea. We've moved it back off the street to meet the setback requirement, and we've moved a little bit over to the left.
Mm-hmm. And the garage out and back, is that going to be common area, shared space, or?
Joe, do you have an answer to that? We're keeping this existing garage in the back. That's going to be for both units?
Where is Joe? I did promote him
Oh,
as a
yeah.
panelist.
He's here.
Well, let me see if somehow because I'm not seeing him now.
Yeah, I see him on the
Hold
bottom
on.
screen.
There we go. It looks like, Bob, it looks like Mr. Proya unmuted himself, but we're not hearing anything.
Must be having some technical difficulties.
That's fine, Ed. I was just curious. It's
Yeah,
not,
I can get you that answer for sure.
yeah, like I said, I was just curious.
Yep.
Not super relevant, but it's a pretty good sized building,
Yeah, it's 40 by 30.
right?
If that is in fact common area, I'll make sure we make a note of that on the plan.
Okay, thanks.
Any other board members? All right, at this time, it is a public hearing, and I will open it up to public comment now.
I do not, here we go. So Aaron Waluka,
Yeah. Can everyone hear me?
you need to
can.
state your name and address.
Aaron Waluka, 31R Paquonicket Ave, Northeastern Mass.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if you could hear me. I had sent a letter. I know the deadline was 10 o'clock this morning for it to get circulated, and I think I said it at 10:57 this morning about numerous concerns with this project. First of all, actually, I'll run through my letter so it's in order. The plan shows a deed reference for an easement, and that deed reference is not correct. That reference is a mortgage document for a property in North Attleboro. The correct deed reference for the easement that I have, which is another note on this, they show that the owner of the property behind that is Robert Roberts. That's incorrect. Myself and my wife own behind it. The correct deed reference for the easement in place over the applicant's property to the benefit of our property is found at book 1262, page 328. That easement language specifically states, together with the right to use in common with others lawfully entitled thereto to the existing right-of-way running westerly from the above described premises along the southerly side of the land of the grantors to Paquonicket Avenue, said way to be used for all purposes which streets or ways are now or may hereafter be commonly used in the town of Easton. I've discussed that easement language numerous times since owning the property, and more recently with a land use attorney and a civil engineer. And both of them had determined that the easement language clearly does not state any dimension of the easement, yet they show a 20-foot wide easement. And the only reasonable interpretations for that could be that the easement is technically over the southern half of the property because it's not specifically called out, or at minimum 50 feet, since it does say all purposes for which streets or ways are now or may hereinafter be commonly used. The current street width, I believe, is 50 feet for a layout. So at minimum, there should be a 50-foot there, and then a setback starting from there in case a street ever does go in there. So that's an issue that we had.
Can I just ask you a question on that? Are you saying 50 feet wide?
Yes.
Well, I mean, that would, if I'm, and I may not be reading this correctly, but if that were the case, that would take up about half of the existing building. I mean, when was this easement granted?
I believe in 1948.
I mean, I hear
Back-
what you're saying. It just, I'm a little skeptical based on the fact that you had a structure there that was, obviously it's older than 75 years old.
Absolutely. The interpretation that I received when I asked the same question was that streets and ways didn't have layout dimensions at that time, and the area that was there was large enough for one then.
Yeah, I hear you, but just because the size of a street changes over time, I don't think that's gonna increase the size of an easement that was granted 60 or 70 years ago. But I hear you, and I didn't mean to interrupt. I do apologize for that.
Oh no, I appreciate the input because we're going back and forth on it amongst ourselves also, and the people that I had talked to had said because of the language that for all purposes for which streets or ways are now or may hereafter be commonly used in the town of Easton, could be interpreted as what I'm talking about. The other thing, the 20-foot wide easement shown on the plan, with the dotted line of the area that's actually used for the easement for the past 40 years aren't accurate. I shouldn't say they're not accurate. The easement doesn't fall. The easement they're showing, the area that we've been using and the two previous owners have been using for well over 40 years now, goes outside of the 20 feet they're showing, and that 20 feet that they're showing is not noted anywhere within the original easement to this property. So I think they just called out that dimension.
Aaron, let me just ask you a question there. So do you have access currently as it stands from Pequannock all the way back to your property?
Yes.
You do. Okay. And is it
without that
paved or
access,
is it gravel or is it?
That's another note that I have on
Okay.
on my letter, that they have this noted as existing paved driveway. That driveway has never been paved as long as I've known, for at least 20 years. So there hasn't been pavement anywhere on that property. The only pavement that's on that property it's a concrete apron by the existing garage, which is only about 5 or 6 feet, maybe 8 feet long. So this is that whole area. Sorry, I'm moving my mouse around on the screen and you can't see it. That whole area is it's been a gravel driveway for years.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it, if I may. There is a gravel driveway going underneath it. Underneath the driveway, we have proposed, I'm circling right here where we have gravel driveway. So the gravel driveway comes up here, that's this dash line, and it turns right here, and this is how it gets access to his property. So the access will not change. It still goes over the same gravel driveway. It's just going to be paved now, and it goes right off the end here and up into the property.
Now, Mr. Jacobs, are you planning on just making it paved all the way to the end of your property line or your client's property line?
Well, we were going to stop it right here. The shaded part is what we're proposing to be paved.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Mr. Waluka, any other further comments?
Yeah, on that comment there, this is labeled as existing paved drive here and back at the garage and at the front. That was my only note on that, is that it's labeled as existing paved and it's not a paved area.
Yeah, that should be that should be proposed.
Right.
That, we'll make that revision.
I didn't know if, and maybe this project doesn't warrant it because of the size of it, but the amount of pavement that's going to go there, should there be any kind of stormwater management for this? I don't know if that's required, but this is, they're going to be taking up almost a large amount of the permeable surface. And then my other comment, if they are able to comply with not obstructing the easement area, then I want to make sure that there's, I'd like to see, I shouldn't say make sure, I'd like to see some sort of a deed restriction, because for the last 4 years, between the showings at that house and the last person that owned it, and when the bank owned it, they block our driveway all the time. I'd like to see something there to prevent that, if at all possible.
You've got an easement, so they can't
Yeah.
do that. They can't do that.
Okay, so I just rely on
has
that.
the effect of a deed restriction, and you could certainly take action. And I'm certainly not your lawyer, but you've got an easement, so you've got a right to
Okay.
it. People can't be blocking you out.
Okay. Another note I had was the parking area behind the proposed new structure notes a driveway depth of 2.0 feet, I think. Or is that 12? Is there a 1 under there?
No, it's 20 feet.
Okay, so that's
It's a
maybe that's
typo.
okay. All right.
Are we showing a decimal point in there? I can't see it.
You show 2.0, yeah. That was a good catch.
Yeah,
Okay. And then I don't see guest parking. With 2 3-bedroom units, there's a possibility that could be with a couple in 1 bedroom and someone driving in the other 2. There's a possibility of 4 cars per unit, which gets back to my concern about blocking the easement, which I understand I'll have to take on a case-by-case basis. But is there guest parking proposed, and where would it be, and would it be labeled?
well, we have a garage. So there's one there, there's another parking space here, and there's another one there. That's 3 parking spaces. And you'd also have this back here if you needed it.
Okay, so that back area is common. It's not specific to the garage. If they were to use the garage for something else.
But even if we weren't going to use that, we meet the requirement for the for each side with the 3 parking spaces.
No, I'm aware of that. I was more concerned about overflow and blocking the easement because it has been an ongoing issue. Then my last note on this is, since the existing garage is to remain according to the applicant's plan, what is its intended use? And it sounds like the owner is not able to communicate, so we might not get that answer tonight. But the previous owner who lived there before this went to the bank and all of this started, operated an auto body and repair shop out of there, which caused contamination of the property, which took a long time for them to clean up. And it was difficult for them to do that, staying off our easement, but they did it most of the time. We just want to make sure that that garage is not going to be a separate space from the 2 townhouses that could be rented separate for, even for a home business that could have any kind of a toxic effect being right next door. And those are my notes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you
This
for
is
that.
Stephanie. Can I comment on 2 of the things that Mr. Waluka said?
Yeah, in particular, the stormwater issue.
The stormwater, so our bylaw requires stormwater management for multifamily, which is defined as 3 or more units, not for 2-family or single family, regardless of the pervious area, unless it's more than an acre, which I don't think is the case here.
No.
And then on the uses, I mean, only an allowed accessory use would be allowed there. And home businesses have a restriction currently on whether or not home business is allowed as long as there are no customers visiting the site. That's a synopsis of what's
Yep.
allowed under the current bylaw.
All right. Thank you.
Can I ask one more question, Mr. Stetson? I'm sorry.
Yes, but please
Very
make this your
quickly.
last one. Yep.
Absolutely last one. It just occurred to me as that was coming up. Is there any chance in the future that that garage could be changed to an ADU?
Well, ADUs are allowed now as a matter of right under state law.
Does that apply to a duplex lot as well?
I assume it applies to any residential lot.
Okay.
Any single family residential zone. They don't really specify the use, so it would be a single family residential zone, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
Thank you for your feedback and your comments.
Yes.
Stephanie, anyone
Thank you
else?
for your time.
No,
course.
I don't see anyone else.
So it seems like we have some revisions to do. Stephanie, you're looking for a landscaping plan,
Yes, please.
and Mr. Waluka did catch some errors on the plan that we'll fix. I'll get a answer from Joe Troyer on what's going to happen with that garage. If it's common area, what's going to happen with that? Anything
Mr.
else?
Jacobs, I would encourage you to reach out to Mr. Waluka and sort out the easement issue.
Yep.
It seems to me that if you've got an easement that has been in use for 50, 60 years, that this ought to be an easy solution, but
Yes.
I'd love to see the two neighbors sort this one out.
I agree.
Thank you.
And Bob,
Yes.
does the board want to see the landscaping plan?
Yes, I would like to see the landscaping plan. Yes. Thank you for reminding me.
I have a question. Do we need to specify on the plans lighting?
We don't usually do that on a single like a residence or a duplex like this, Amos.
Okay.
Mr. Jacobs, when would you like to come back?
We can be ready for the next meeting.
Okay. I will accept a motion.
Motion to continue this public hearing until, I don't know the next meeting date, I'm sorry.
Is it the 28th?
I think it is.
It's the 29th. It's Tuesday.
Oh,
Okay.
I knew there was something weird about it.
yes.
Zygmunt, I'll second that. Nope, sorry.
No worries.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Zygmunt,
Aye.
Kedem,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Stetson's and I as well.
Bob,
Yes.
there is just one problem with the 29th that I just learned last week and had forgotten to mention to Suzanne. I have to be at the budget hearings on the 29th, so I won't be at the meeting
Okay.
if we have the meeting on that day. And I hadn't had a chance to talk with Suzanne about what might be an acceptable alternative date for the board.
Well, if it's okay with Mr. Jacobs, why don't we leave it on for the 29th for now? And, if it turns out that we need to make a change, maybe we can reach out to him in
Yeah.
the
I'm
next
fine with that.
week or so.
And I'm thinking of residents that were here, so Mr. Waluka would also know to check back in with us on that, and
Very
we'll make sure we
point.
reach out to everybody.
Good point.
Very good.
All right. So in terms of the motion to continue, Weeks,
Aye.
I think I got everybody else. So Stetson's and I as well. Kedem, did I get you on that one?
Yeah.
I think you got them all. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Mr. Jacobs, we'll see you in a few weeks.
Okay, thanks very much. Have a good
All
night.
right. Thank you. All right, next up is another public hearing, and this one is for 95 Union Street, modification to definitive subdivision and special permit. Mickey?
Town of Easton notice of public hearing in accordance with the provisions of MGL Chapter 41, Section 81T. The Easton Planning and Zoning Board will hold a virtual public hearing for Garcon Corp. On Monday, April 14th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. for a modification to the definitive subdivision, creating 4 lots, including a special permit estate lot, Easton Town Code 235-43 at 95 Union Street, Assessor's Map 5U, Lot 54 off Winterberry Lane. Zoom meetings and instructions will be posted 48 hours in advance of the meeting at www.easton.ma.us. A copy of this application and plan may be viewed on the town website. This notice is also available at www.masspublicnotices.org. Those who cannot attend and wish to submit written testimony for the record may do so by sending an email with the subject address reference on this notice to dped@easton.ma.us. If the testimony is not received by 10 a.m. the day of the hearing, the board may not have sufficient time to consider it. Written testimony should include your full name and address. Anonymous written comments may not be accorded the same weight as testimony from identifiable sources.
Thank you, Mickey. All right. Mr. Diaz, good evening. Do we have
Good
anyone
evening,
else
everyone.
joining you?
No, I'm solo tonight.
All right, the floor is yours.
I appreciate that. Thank you. For the record, Eric Dias, registered professional engineer with Strong Point Engineering, representing Garcon Corp. For 95 Union Street. You all may remember, and I'm going to share my screen as I talk to save a little time. We were before you with this exact piece of property for a proposed four lot A&R back in November of 2024. There is basically most of our discussion revolved around whether or not this could be approved as an A&R. Just for reference, this is Winterberry Lane. This is the first cluster of houses. This is the second cluster of houses. And this is the piece of property that we're talking about. We had talked about whether or not this could be approved as an A&R. There is language in the permit that created Winterberry that talks about any modifications or substantial changes need to come back for a modification. So the board had ultimately erred, I will say, on the side of caution and said, let's come back for a subdivision modification. Let's get everybody notified of this so all the members of the HOA and the abutters, have a chance to talk. And then we agreed. So that's what we did and why we're here tonight. We have received staff report. I have been in contact with Stephanie on this a little bit, and we do have a few things that we certainly need to work out. So I'll be very brief tonight. What we did want to do was just come give a very brief overview, get initial comments from the board. So that way, by the time we come back here, hopefully we have, all comments in hand and we can address everything all at one time. So this is what we're proposing. The lot layout has not changed from the A&R that we submitted. There are 1, 2, 3, what I'll call standard lots. They have the area, the frontage that's required under the bylaw. And then there is one proposed estate lot that does meet the bylaw requirements as well. And we have, as noted, submitted a special permit for that. The idea with a subdivision modification of this kind, very, very simply put, is to illustrate that this potential development will not negatively impact or really impact at all the remainder of the project. So on a project like this, there are really 3 things that may provide an impact to the surrounding houses that are served by Winterberry Lane. That is stormwater, utilities, and traffic patterns. So from a stormwater perspective, depending on how you look at this, this may or may not fall under the state stormwater guidelines. But regardless of that, this is designed to meet all of the state stormwater standards.
Government waste as it becomes public enemy number.
Oh, I hope I'm not the public enemy number one. So this was designed to basically be standalone as far as stormwater is concerned. We're not connecting to any of the infrastructure in Winterberry for stormwater. All of the proposed driveways, and I'll zoom in, have trench drains across the base right at the property line. So that water, any water from the driveway will be collected, will be put into recharge facilities. All of the rooftop runoff will do the same exact thing. They will go to rooftop facilities on the site. And this longer driveway is equipped with a couple of catch basins along the way, placed strategically to isolate that stormwater as well. So we want it to be standalone in this. There is a major drainage feature of Winterberry is this drainage swale that runs through the median. I believe it's technically probably a rain garden. And by all reports, that's working very well. So we don't intend to mess with it so much, which brings me to utilities. This will be all on-site septic. These septics will be isolated. Each cluster on Winterberry has a community septic system. These will be completely separate from that. We will tie into the municipal water system in Winterberry, which is located on the opposite side of that median. So what we're proposing is to tunnel under the median to make the connection, to do it like almost like a directional drill to not disturb that median at all, as long as we don't have to. Obviously, those means and methods will need to be approved and confirmed by the DPW for the connection, but that is our intention. And I should also say that we're proposing to cross that one time. So we don't want to come across with 4 individual feeds and have to do it multiple times. We're going to come across with one larger feed that will come to the edge of what we're calling lot 1. And then on our side, we will run a trunk line and feed to each lot off of there. And then the last thing that has the potential to be a possible impact is the traffic. We would submit without having done a full traffic analysis, not believing that it's warranted here. The traffic, the average daily trips from 4 single-family residences are very, very minor in comparison to the total of traffic that would come through this place. So we don't believe anyone will notice an effective difference or a notable increase in traffic. Winterberry, as you may know, is sort of one way in and one way out right now. So people who are coming to, I'll call it the second grouping of houses come along the right side of the median, and then they would loop all the way around the cul-de-sac in the middle. We're not proposing to change that for these houses. These houses will go that distance. There has been some talk between, or question, I should say, as to will there be a cut through installed, or the median does end, and I guess you could technically do a very sharp U-turn if you wanted to. A passenger car could do it, a box truck probably couldn't. Not our intention to do that. We want everybody to follow the same traffic patterns that everybody else does right now. And I know that there's been some discussion about what will construction traffic do while these houses are being built, and the intention is the same. What we would want to do is limit traffic. We would not want, heavy machinery coming in here every day. Get it to the site, get the job done, and get out of there. No, don't come in and out. Which leads me to the few things that we do have to do that came up in the staff report. One, because of the way that the town defines area, we are going to need to file an ANRAD on this with the Conservation Commission to confirm the wetland line, which in turn confirms that we have the lot area that we need. As you know, the town definition, I think the lot has to be at least 90% upland of the required area. So we are in process on that. We intend to be submitting that ANRAD this week, and we'll be at the next meeting, and hopefully we'll see you folks on the other side of that. We have a quote from Beta for peer review of the stormwater, which I briefly touched on. I know that Stephanie's office is waiting for the funds for that, which we should also have this week. And lastly, it noted in the staff report is an agreement with the HOA, right? If these 4 houses are going to use the right of way and the infrastructure, then they should contribute in some way. And I did submit earlier this evening, and I don't believe anybody saw it because it did come in late, but I did provide a letter from our legal counsel that indicates that we have been working with the HOA's legal counsel. We're in a point where we think we have basically any issues resolved. The HOA will be meeting with their counsel, I believe it's the 23rd, to do what is hopefully a final review on that. And then that will be satisfied and we will provide that to the board as well for evidence. But the basic intention is that the homeowners of these 4 homes would provide the appropriate percentage to the HOA fees for everything minus the septic, because they're not tying into the initial septic system. And I believe the HOA's legal counsel may be on the call tonight. And he can certainly correct me if I said something, incorrect, because the council has been dealing with this and I'm hearing it secondhand. And really, the last reason that we wanted to come tonight, I think more than anything, is that the staff report suggests that the board may want to have a site walk. I'm anticipating by the time we get through the ANRAD, we probably wouldn't be back to you folks until probably the meeting after next. And I'd hate to get to the other side of the ANRAD and then want to schedule a site walk. So if that's something that the board was interested in, perhaps we could run that concurrently in the time before we get back to you folks for another meeting. So that's what I've got. Certainly glad to answer any questions, but obviously I don't think anybody feels we're in a position to close this tonight.
Dias, thank you for your remarks. One question I had for you, and maybe the HOA's attorney could fill me in here too as well, is will there be, as part of this agreement, an indemnity for any damage that occurs to the roadway during the construction process?
I am going to defer to the HOA's counsel if he's on the call. I think that's a great point, and certainly makes sense that it would be in there. So I'm hopeful that it is. And if it's not, we will get it in there.
Okay, because I think that may address some of the comments that I would anticipate tonight. And then hitting on your last point, I know I, for one, would be interested in a site visit, especially I haven't been out there. And I'd like to see some of the traffic patterns that you alluded to earlier. And you guys could just nod your heads if you agree. But board members, is this something that you would be interested in doing as well? Okay. All right. So I think that's the answer to your question. And I agree with you. It makes sense to try to set this up concurrently, before you come back the next time to avoid, another meeting where we're unable to act. So we can, I guess, Stephanie, maybe, later this week, we can work out some days that are convenient for Mr. Diaz and his team and the board members.
We will do that.
And then I was just going to turn it over to you, Stephanie. So.
Okay, do you want to hear from Mr. Kurth now, or do you want to wait until after I have?
Why don't we wait? I mean, I'm sure he heard my comments, and I do anticipate opening it up to some public commentary tonight, so we can address Mr. Kurth at that point.
Right. I think that Eric probably has covered my staff report as well as I would be able to, but let me just go over, let's see, pages. I seem to be, let me go back to the online version. So again, one of the biggest questions and I think concerns we had and recognized from some of the comments and outreach we've received from residents is participation in the HOA, both going forward and, as you pointed out, indemnification of from damages that might occur during construction. I think Mr. Dias addressed the water department's comments about the service being at least the 1-inch type K copper. And you mentioned that you're planning on doing I'm going to use the term directional boring to tie into and bring a main line from the existing connection that serves Winterberry Hills currently, and then you'll pull the trunks off of the individual lots. Again, have you had that conversation with Rich Tierney yet, or Josh?
I have not had that yet. But certainly before we get back to the next meeting, I will make a point to do that. In fact, I actually put it in my notes tonight. And the other reason I certainly want to have that conversation is because while we're only pulling one line initially, it's definitely going to need to be larger than a 1 inch. So the line that we run our side, I would imagine the main would be at least a 2 when we would jump off of that. So I want to coordinate that with Rich, definitely.
Okay, I would strongly suggest that. Thank you. Then currently mail delivery to Winterberry Hills is in a cluster mailbox that's located at the entrance. My understanding is, and I can't imagine that the post office would do individual delivery to these 4 units. They are cutting down on that and won't do it for any new subdivision. They all have to have these cluster mailboxes. So the applicant will need to coordinate that with the homeowners association. We talked about stormwater and Eric addressed that. And yes, as soon as we get those funds in, then I can give the go-ahead to BSC, beta. Sorry, we're doing beta on that one. We talked about the construction vehicles, again, the traffic flow. I agree that the additional 4 units normally is not, doesn't generate a tremendous amount of traffic and burden. But these roadways were constructed and permitted to a lower standard than we have even for most of our like flexible development subdivisions. And it does that second cul-de-sac, all the traffic will be directed over and around that. So I think that's just something to take into consideration. Let's see, we talked about the wetland delineation, which is important. And I think there were really no other comments. Other than the fire department in lot 3 will require a discussion at a later date. My guess is they're going to want to see that sprinklered.
Yeah, at least some sort of hydrant or something up there, but we get, why don't I put in my notes to coordinate that with them as well, so we know what that's gonna be.
Thank you, Stephanie. Board members?
I have a quick question. Other than lot size, will the houses look the same as the existing homes in the other parts of the neighborhood? I haven't been there for a while, so I'm not too familiar with it, but I was just wondering if the intention is to make it look like all part of the same neighborhood in terms of exterior detail, if there's any covenants about roof type, garages, lines, or anything like that.
Sure, through the chair. Honestly, that's something that I haven't considered. I know that this particular applicant typically doesn't build the houses himself. So, it may be a single family homeowner, it may be a developer who's going to come build all 4 houses. There may have been some discussion with the HOA's council about some sort of covenant, as you suggest, and I think it's perfectly appropriate. So I think I'll defer to him on that for tonight. And, if that conversation hasn't been had, it probably should.
Yeah, I see footprints there. I don't know if they all have to have garages, if all the other houses have garages. It's been a while since I've taken a ride through there, but I will probably do that sometime soon.
Sure.
All right. Anyone else? Well, at this point, I'm going to open it up for a few minutes of public comment, recognizing that we'll have another opportunity likely in a few weeks. But Stephanie, do we have?
We have Stephen Gray.
Okay.
And if he'd identify himself and his address.
Mr. Gray, if you can hear us, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you, however.
Or it's muted.
He's not muted as far as I can tell. Maybe we go on to someone else.
What about,
Because-
is it possible, I know you've promoted Mr. Kurth. Is it possible
Yes.
to go to him?
Yep.
Mr. Kurth, if you can unmute yourself and just let us know who you represent, then the floor is yours.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me or letting me participate this evening. My name is Adam Kurth. I am from the law firm of Marcus, Errico, Emmer, and Brooks, located in Braintree, Massachusetts. Here on behalf of the Winterberry Hills HOA Board of Trustees. Thanks very much to Eric for his presentation. I think it just might be worthwhile just confirming a couple things, maybe clarifying a couple things. I appreciate Eric's comments, in particular, addressing or talking about things based on flow of traffic design and how the homes would use Winterberry Lane, because that was a concern because of the median and how that design is currently. And there's if driveways had to cut across to one side to sort of disrupt the traffic pattern, that's something that I know the board is concerned about. So I appreciate that explanation that is not what is being proposed here. Definitely happy to hear that there is going to be a stormwater consultant that's going to be doing some peer review work here. That is something, not surprisingly, given the elaborate stormwater controls that needed to be put in for the Winterberry development, that is something that is of utmost concern. I can also confirm that I have been working with the Developers Council on that road maintenance agreement. While I appreciate their enthusiasm and just some of the exact verbiage in the letter, I think in part, and it is absolutely true, I can confirm that the board will be speaking about the decision next week, about the agreement next week, and that we've exchanged comments back and forth. Thank you also to the applicant's attorneys for preparing the initial draft of that agreement. And they've reviewed some comments I've provided. And we're going back and forth. I will say that because there was such limited plan details at the November proceedings, it was difficult, I think, for the board to sort of evaluate things or what exactly was happening here. I think there's been great progress made on the agreement, and continued progress will be made as quickly as possible. But I think the board did also want to see the sort of bigger design proposal here and understand that a little better. So I appreciate Eric taking the time to discuss the certain pieces of that. One clarification point I would raise just about that piece about the mailboxes. I can understand from a practical perspective, but I have not gotten a sense from prior conversation with Stephanie or just sort of any indications, whether it's been passed through from town council feedback, et cetera, that this will be separate homes like this. It's not the town's expectation that this becomes part of Winterberry Hills. To the extent I would clarify that, I don't think either side here is looking for that to happen, appreciating that given the unusual nature of what's going on here with easement rights, and wanting to have an agreement about how to use the private way, that we're going to enter into this private agreement together. But I hopefully, I think that's the sense on both sides, that this would not become technically part of Winterberry Hills.
So, Bob, do you want me to respond to that? So yes, after we had conversations with town council, we are not looking at this as being a modification to the comprehensive permit. So they are not these additional lots are not part of the Winterberry Hills comprehensive permit.
Thank you, Stephanie. And just to address, I believe the chair, you raised this question about indemnity provisions. We have certainly tried to, we have proposed of utmost importance to Winterberry Hills is that there not be disturbance or anything going wrong with, or that we run afoul of anything, number one, in terms of the original permitting conditions here, or any permitting conditions that relates to Winterberry. We have proposed some language in the agreement related to that, in the developer's attorney, I believe, has been receptive to that. So that was nice to see. To the extent we'll take a look back, I hear the chair's comment there. I think we have we tried to add provisions in the agreement about how things will be handled and how things will need to be put back into place both during and after construction. But hearing the chair's concern or raising that question, we can take a look back to make sure that we're doing enough on the indemnity side. And one other question I would raise, and Stephanie may or may not be able to answer this, but I believe at some point town council had indicated it may be just when the parties are closer to having that agreement finalized or near finalized. I think maybe town council wanted to take a look as well. So just would be happy to get some clarification on that as well, if that's the case.
Bob, I don't think town council felt they needed to weigh in. The agreement needs to be between the two parties. The town, from our perspective, it's just that the board wants to see that these agreements are in place to protect actually both parties.
Understood. I wasn't sure if they actually, he or she actually wanted to take a look once the parties had finalized it between themselves to potentially make any other offer suggestions. So thanks for the clarification. For the moment, I should add, just to clarify, I've sort of raised the important questions that we had initially, or at least that I have from the Board of Trustees based on the initial application materials. I will say, after further taking a look, or potentially have an opportunity to get a look at the peer review report, the board may have other questions at the next public hearing. But for the moment, I think I have, at least for the moment, just with Eric's explanation there and background and this back and forth with the board, that's all the comments that I would make at this time.
Mr. Chair, if I may, through the chair to Mr. Kurth. Mr. Kurth and I haven't actually had an opportunity to talk on this project yet. So Mr. Kurth, I know you have meetings with the HOA. I just want to offer, if it would be helpful, I'm glad to come present at those meetings as well, and answer any of their questions directly if you feel that that's helpful.
And I appreciate that, Eric. I'll certainly offer that up to the board and I'll see what they say. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'm just letting you know, Bob, we have 4 people with their hands raised. Let me go to, and that includes Mr. Gray. I'll try him again at another point, but Beth Sullivan, I'm promoting.
Stephanie?
To talk. Yes.
Don't mean to interrupt, but I don't think Bob's moved on the screen in quite a while. He might be having some technical difficulties.
Bob? I'm not sure who you're referencing.
Bob, the chairman.
Oh.
I haven't seen him move, at least on my side, and I can't hear him.
Now that you mention, I kind of thought that was okay. Well, I am going to move forward and I'll send him a text while I allow Beth Sullivan to speak. I think he would want me to do that.
That makes sense.
May I ask a few questions or bring up a few points? The first is, what do you expect to be the duration of the build out? For instance, how long will the second phase circle have all of this building material, heavy material going around and around a circle that's usually used by children to play, families to walk, etc. And also, with all that heavy equipment, on one side we have our septic system, on the other side we have the homeowner's land. The road is very small. So that is a problem for the homeowners who live there. That's one thing. A second question is, you are going to have haulage of earth, a lot of material, and a lot of debris. How is that going to affect our bridge, which is the only way that phase 2 people in Winterberry have of getting to their homes if something happens to that bridge? And so that's got to be a consideration. And because we know that in that property that you're talking about, the new property, there are a whole field of boulders, used vehicles. So that's going to be a lot of haulage, taking all of that out, all of that debris, and passing that over our bridge. So that's a big consideration.
Okay, I
Oh.
would like to just jump in for a second. So Bob he could hear us, but it looks like he's already tried to restart. I don't see him, so he may be coming back on. And Ms. Sullivan, I'd just like to, so if the applicant, if Eric could respond to those questions, and we do have 3 other people, so we'll want to move on.
Sure, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I was taking notes, so I'll go through these in order. As far as the duration of build out, it partly depends on when this gets started for seasonal reasons. But something like this, start to finish, is probably about a 6-month process. It would be our intention to limit construction traffic around the circle. I would not want to see, heavy equipment making laps around there any more than it needed to happen. We'd want to get machines to the site, keep them at the site, and then get them out of there, albeit, there will be deliveries and things like that is inevitable. The septic system loading, as far as passing over that, so that septic system, and I wrote in my notes to confirm this, should have been designed to be capable of what's called H20 loading, which is basically strong enough to handle the traffic from a construction vehicle without an issue. So that is something that we'll take a look at. And, point taken with the bridge, my answer is that, again, all bridges should be designed and constructed to support that kind of loading and then some. They're usually constructed with a pretty significant safety factor for obvious reasons. But again, good point. So I'm going to dig into the record information on that bridge, confirm that, and if need be, we'll have structural do an evaluation of it.
Okay, I am now going to promote, I don't see Bob yet, back on. I am going to allow Felicity Kagan to speak. And again, Ms. Kagan, we have other people who want to speak. So on behalf of the chair, I ask that you ask your questions, allow the applicant's representative to answer those, and this will not be a back and forth. So Ms.
Hello? Unmute.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. This layout of the site strips off a portion of my land on the easterly side that borders the Wildlands Trust. That strip was a designed fire access road placed in 1981, mandated by the Office of Forest Conservation, so Benson can put this 95 Union Street under forest conservation. So that strip of land on the east side of my property, which is the old French farm at 75 Union Street, goes up 3/4 of the way up the border of Wildlands Trust, and on the right side of that trail is continuously flowing gullies, and on the left side of that trail is the Dorchester Brook, which is continuously flowing. So that trail that was sold as 95 Union Street going up to the south of 91 Union Street is fraudulent. He doesn't own that land and never has. At the bottom of my land on the easterly side where the Dorchester Brook flows through, there have been placed 2 concrete slabs, 6 feet by 6 feet. 3 feet of the northern part of the slab is on my property. And
Ms. Kagan,
yes,
I'm sorry, you did not state your name or your address for the record.
Felicity Burt Kagan, 75 Union Street. So the Dorchester Brook flows through the southeasterly, from the middle to the southeasterly part of my property, and it's been blocked by the 2 concrete slabs placed by Wayne Benson Sr. So the Dorchester Brook, in some areas, it's been listed under as the www.FWS, the Fish and Wildlife Service, coordinated with the United States Geological Survey. This stream in some areas is 8.2 feet in depth with perpetual permanent running water. In other areas, the stream, with its break-off feeder brook that goes westward towards the wetlands near the Dorchester Brook Estates, is also semi-permanent or permanent. We went back there in late August of 2003, and the water is magnificent, running everywhere, permanent, semi-permanent. It recedes during the growing season and comes right back, but it's still quite evident that there's a lot of water. And Benson blocked the flow of water from the Dorchester Brook, backing it up into my land. So it's a deep, dark, navy French blue, and it's just very deep. So if there's any flooding in there, like the Mass DEP wetlands map that indicates all of phase 2 of Winterberry, including some of the areas where you propose to put houses, and the bottom of part of phase 1 is in a floodplain, a FEMA Zone A floodplain, I believe you're going to have some significant problems. And around behind Carol Porsche's house at 65 Union Street, there's a Easton Conservation Commission vernal pool. It's larger than it is in reality, and during the winter months, the woodland freezes over quite considerably far back into that woods. That whole area is pocked by vernal pools that you've marked as wetland. But you are going to have some significant problems with the vernal pools, not the vernal pools, the flooding during a Zone A flooding all around that place when a tropical storm comes. And they're saying that the French Pond Dam is in poor condition. It's 125 feet long, built in 1760. And when it blows, when it collapses, that whole area back there, they're saying will have significant ecological and environmental damage. So that whole area in around the back part of 95 Union Street and the brook that breaks off from Dorchester Brook and goes westward and continues around the Easton Conservation Commission land there and ends up in the wetland near the Dorchester Brook Estates and rejoins back to the Monty Pond. You are going to have significant problems with wetland and flooding. And you look on the Mass DEP wetland map, and you can see that all of phase 2 will be underwater. It's considered a Zone A floodplain. My recommendation to you, because there's water, high volumes of water going in there, do you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
High volumes of water going through there from Cedar Swamp, the same source of water of Whitman Brook, Langwater, and Quasit Brook. This water is more pure, refined, deep, dark navy French blue with brown trout fish in it. It is a prime source for wells for the Town of Easton's water department. Down there, Monty Pond, in late 1960s, that dam broke apart, and that 20-acre Monty Pond pond where they got 14,000 tons of ice for every harvesting multiple times during a year. That's 28,000 pounds of ice they got out of there. You're going to have significant problems with water flowing there, especially during a tropical storm, because this map that's drawn by your civil engineers doesn't represent the fact that the breakoff brook that goes southwestward flows into that pond and rejoins Dorchester Pond, which flows completely south. So that's what I want to say. And I think that the town, because this place has been filed under originally the Office of Forest Conservation, where they took that strip of fire access road up on the east side of my property, bordering wildlands, you're going to have problems with water, and this property also has been filed under 61A in 1983 every 10 years, and the last time it was filed under 61A was April 19th, 2024. Lots 49B, 50, 51, and UP-39. So you're going to have problems there with water, with the United States Supreme Court, Sackett versus the EPA, where no residential, industrial, commercial development can any longer dump its wastewater effluent, leaching field water, catch basin water, or infiltration water into continuously flowing brooks or streams, or even wetlands that feed in the brook. And behind one of the houses is a wetland that feeds into the brook that flows into the wetland near the Dorchester Brook Estates. And there's a wetland in Wildlands Trust, which flows into the Dorchester Brook, and there's gullies of running water and brooks all throughout that area. That's what I want to say.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. Stephanie, anyone else?
We have Roy Nakowicz, and again, if he could identify himself. Let's see. And his address. And unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can hear you now, sir. Please introduce yourself, and the floor will be yours.
Okay, I'm Roy Nakowicz. I live at 128 Winterberry Lane. And a couple of comments that I wanted to make is I've been living here over 10 years, and I'm in the second phase of Winterberry. Within the last 2 or 3 years, the amount of water behind our homes has increased. Used to be pretty dry back there. The last few years, there's quite a bit more water. My concern is putting 4 homes in there, and if the water is not managed correctly, the last thing we need to do is tip that water table even more and wind up with more water behind our houses. I called conservation once to just ask if they had any idea of what was going on there, but I really, didn't get any clarification on that. So the rain gardens are very specifically designed. I'd like the board to just understand we're not even allowed to wash our cars in our driveways. Part of the rules of Winterberry, we can't put that amount of water out, or with soap. If it gets into conservation, that's a concern. So I just wanted to give you a perspective on what we're up against with water management by our homes. The other concern that I have is during any construction, if they have to, I know they're planning on tunneling under the road and the rain garden, but if for any reason they disturb that road, as one of my neighbors said, that is our only access, which means that is also the only access that ambulances and fire engines can make it into phase 2. So they need to make sure that that road, at least half of the road, since we have an inward and an outward side, need to be available, because unfortunately over the years, we've had both ambulances and fire engines come through there. That road cannot be shut down at any time. It can't be blocked. They need to have that access. The other thing is, in looking at the plans for the water management and reading what's up on a website about it, they claim that these systems would need maintenance every year. They're estimating, I think it said $1,000 a year. Once these 4 houses would be put in, and if that maintenance is crucial to keeping the water flowing the way that it should so that we don't get flooded, who polices that? Is that somebody in the town? Is that just that we expect that the new neighbors will just, do that? Does the board have anything to say about that? I'm just curious. Who makes sure that that maintenance is done? And the other thing is plowing. If you have 4 driveways coming out onto Winterberry, they really can't plow the snow out there because they can't plow it into the rain gardens. They're going to have a plan of how to move their snow around, because we actually have places where our snow can be deposited in phase 2. So these are concerns that I have just based on living here and seeing, what goes on. And especially if the board has not been through the development, it would probably be a worthwhile thing to walk through it and even look at our backyards and look at what's back there. And any tipping of that water table is going to make that a lot worse. And that is a major concern. The other question I have is, when these homes are spoken about, it's given one lot number, like 95. Are those, I had heard at one point that access to Winterberry was granted in an easement, but it sounded like it was a singular access. Has that been worked out?
If I may, through the chair, there is an access easement. The question of access has come up. My understanding, and I don't know if Attorney Kurth is still on the call, but my understanding is that the HOA's attorney and the applicant's legal counsel are in agreement on access rights on that. So.
Why?
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll get more clarification on that.
Thank you, Mr. Nakowitz.
Thank you for listening.
Of course. So I do want to Mr. Diaz, he raised a couple of points. I assume one of them will be addressed through the stormwater review, and one of them will, of course, be addressed when we go out there. But in terms of the maintenance issue that Mr. Nakowitz raised, has that been discussed as part of, at a minimum, the agreement with the HOA? Because I haven't gone back and studied the comprehensive permit to see what the limitations were there. But he raises a fair point. If there are a whole bunch of limits on what they can and cannot do with their water, perhaps we should be sensitive to that with this modification of the subdivision as well.
I agree, Mr. Chair. I don't know if that conversation has come up in negotiations between both sides council, but it's a point that's well taken. What Mr. Knuckowitz is referring to with regard to maintenance of those systems is the operations and maintenance plan for those systems. They do need to be maintained and checked on a regular basis. And more often than not, you open them up and check them and they're fine. If they're not maintained, they don't function well. Typically, on a project that goes through Concom, the operations and maintenance plan can be made a condition of the Conservation Commission permits. It remains in perpetuity. The intent right now is that the development from this site, the disturbed areas would stay outside of buffer zones. So in theory, these would not end up going to the Conservation Commission for a proposed development permit. So that may be something that the board wants to consider making a condition of approval that those be adhered to, and certainly something that can probably, be written into agreement with the HOA and things like that, to, provide safeguards.
And Bob, if I just may add to that, I mean, we've done that in the past for the planning board approvals.
Excellent. All right. Do we have any other?
We don't have any other new, Mr. Kurth lowered his hand, so there are.
Okay, at this point, because we are going to continue this hearing, of course, I think that's probably all that needs to be said for tonight. I will accept a motion.
When are we going to be continuing this to the public hearing to the next meeting?
Actually, if I may, through the chair, that's a fantastic question. If I heard right, your next meeting,
The 29th.
the 29th. I know we will not be through the Conservation Commission by then. So I would suggest that we push it off to the following meeting. And as that meeting approaches, if for some reason we're still going through the motions there, we may look to push it out further just because we don't want to take up more of the board's time until we have something to show.
Thank you. Suzanne, when is the May meeting?
May 12th.
May 12th. All right.
So motion to continue the public hearing to May 12th. Wolf?
Zygmunt, second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Weeks.
Aye.
Kedem.
Aye.
Zygmunt.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
And Stetson's and I as well. Thank you, Mr. Diaz, and thank you for all the participants tonight. Very helpful.
Thank you all very much.
Are you still in the meeting? I'm going to the bathroom.
Stephanie, are you able to remove people or do they have to X out?
No, I can remove them.
Just because there's some feedback noise. Right. Next up is meeting minutes. Any comments, thoughts?
Motion to approve the minutes. Wolf?
Second?
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Weeks.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Kedem. Oh, you're on mute. Amos, you're on mute.
Aye.
Zygmunt.
Aye.
And Stetson's and I as well. Now we have two ZBA requests for comment. The first is on 2 Christina Drive. This is a request for variance. Stephanie, do you want to run us through this one?
Yes, I will. Let's see. So I'm going to share my screen. Basically, both of these are asking for a lot line variance. And let's see. Can you see my screen? but it looks like
Yes.
you, are you seeing the plan or are you seeing my report?
I see a
plan.
plan.
Okay, good. All right, so this is, just get to, so make sure, this property wants to add on to the property. They'd like to add an addition onto the house. This property to the south is part of the open space that was actually, I think this one is the one with, it looks like a drainage easement. And this is a drainage basin. So I'm going to go to this picture right here. So this is the property that's owned by the association. It's a drainage easement. This is 2 Christina Drive. They want to put their addition on here. And they are looking for relief from the side setback requirement. Basically, what they're looking is to reduce the side setback to 3.3 feet. One of the concerns I have both with this one and another, I mean, this is my comment. It's up to the board to decide, but it's hard to tell here what's going on if there's encroachment from this property onto this land here, because it's a drainage basin. I'm guessing that most of this is maintained to keep the basin functional, so it may not be encroachment from that property.
Is that a GIS view? Sometimes the
It
lot lines
is,
are not
yes.
very accurate on those, but. hard to tell.
Correct,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, there's definitely no room
You-
in that view for an addition.
Stephanie, you say lot size, but this actually is just setback, right?
The setback requirement, right. I'm sorry if I said lot size.
You did.
Yeah.
Now, and now that's the only option they have to.
Well,
put
what's
the
happening
addition,
here
they
is
could-
they already have a deck, they have a concrete patio, there's a retaining wall. Presumably, this was graded such that they needed a retaining wall to be able to grade this out and hold it in. On this side, they'd have a similar issue. There's really not a lot of area here, but it looks like they have some. You can see that this dashed area informs the side yard setback.
But they could go to the front. It's more complicated and maybe requires redesign of the interior layout of the house, but they have room on the front.
What is to the left of the house? It says a fence something or other. I can't quite read it.
To the left,
Yeah,
over
right
this
there.
way, this is bituminous paved drive right there.
Oh, that's the driveway. Thank you.
And this is fencing here.
Got it. So the garage is pointing in that direction. Got it.
Yes, yep.
So what do we think?
Is this an accessory dwelling or is this just an addition to the house?
It's another additional room for an in-law.
Well, that's what I was asking. Is it an accessory dwelling or is it just an addition?
No, it's an addition.
It's an addition. They didn't identify it as an ADU.
Okay.
And it wouldn't complete, so an ADU by right requires that you meet the setback requirements. So it doesn't
Right.
mean you couldn't do an ADU and ask for a variance of the setback requirements.
But Stephanie, there is a question. They could do the addition to the front. Might not look right, nice, or whatever, but they have enough
Yes,
room in the front.
I mean, and either meet the setback requirements or have less of a non-compliance.
Yeah, and it might be more expensive, yes, and it might not look as nice, but it's definitely an option. They might need to change the entrance door or whatever, the main door there. But maybe even not, if it is somehow the true is an easement and there is no abutters on that side, so
It also looks like they have a propane tank in the front too, so they'd probably have to move that if they were gonna bump out the addition to the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no one on that side. I don't know. Everybody's got a different view when it comes to our role on these variance requests. From my perspective, it's sort of, does this fit within the character of what we're trying to accomplish as a zoning board? And when it comes to the actual, checking the marks in terms of whether it meets the standard for a variance, we kind of leave that up to the ZBA. But that's just one person. I mean, in terms of the character of the neighborhood, my sense is it's consistent. But certainly probably could be done a different way, maybe not. But I don't know. I mean, that's just one voice. I mean, what do we think? Generally, we have three options here. We can recommend it, we can oppose it, or we can just provide no comment.
I mean, it'll increase the square footage of the house, presumably increase the valuation. There's really not a neighbor issue. It's just the case that the setback gets reduced to something significantly below the requirement. So, I think there's a case for and against, although without an abutter that's got any concern, I guess I'd be more inclined to, say that it's probably an okay thing. But that's just my thought.
I second those thoughts.
yeah, I think although it could have been done different, it's not the end of the world, and I think we can recommend this.
Does the abutter need to be notified of an addition
Oh, yes.
going on through the process? Yeah, so they'll be able to
They
come back
need to be
and have their
notified
say
of the
about it.
variance and what
Yeah.
is being requested and for what purpose.
Because I'm looking at the street view, and although on paper it seems like there's a lot of space between the two houses, it's not as huge of a space as the paper made it seem to be, for me at least. But I guess from my point of view, I agree with what others have said. I mean, I think the purpose often of setbacks is to maintain the character of the neighborhood, but also for safety reasons. And they still seem to have plenty of access around the house from that side, even with this proposed addition. So I wouldn't be opposed to it.
I looked at a Google map, and this doesn't really change the character of that neighborhood or anything like that. So that's the reason I say we could recommend without.
Anyone want to present a motion?
Motion to recommend the variance, Kevin.
A second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Weeks.
Aye.
Zygmunt.
Aye.
Kedem.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
And Stetson's an aye as well. All right, on to the last one.
So this is very similar. They are looking for relief from the setback requirement. Let me go. Where's the plan? Have to zoom in. Boy, I can't read it, so if I can't read it, certainly you folks won't be able to. All right. Driveway, propane tank. Looks like they all have propane tanks. Sorry, I'm trying to find this on the, should have circled it. So this is the homeowners association. It's a 15-foot side yard setback. They're proposing an in-ground pool and reducing the side yard setback to 14 feet. I don't know what this existing 51.6 is. But this is where they're proposing the in-ground pool and a 14-foot side yard setback. So just 1 foot less than the standard required. And then I did do an aerial of this. This is the conservation land that looks like it was approved as part of this subdivision. It looked like it was an open space residential development where they had a requirement for the open space.
Are there any other pools in that neighborhood from the area?
Oh, I didn't, this doesn't show any.
Doesn't look like it. So the pool would be in the back between the strip there.
Like it would be right here. Mhm.
Oh, okay, I see.
Oh, sorry, this is the house.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah, right where the hand is. Got it.
yep.
Is in between the houses?
No, it's going to be between the house and this open space.
Between the house and between the open space and the existing deck, I think, right back
Yes.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Somewhere right around here.
Yeah, I mean, and this is another one where, of course, because of the variance process, the neighbors are going to get their say and be able to say something. How much conservation space is back there, Stephanie? You know, past, I'm even talking about past the little easement area.
So it goes
Is it all-
around and goes back around this way. I mean, it's quite a bit over here, many acres.
Yeah, but you know there is a house behind that where they propose a pool. I'm looking at Google Maps, and you can see a house there.
in other words, almost on the left side of the screen that we're looking at?
Okay. Yeah, can you put your hand, the hand where the pool is going to be?
In this area.
Oh no. There is a house, but it's far away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and
Well,
they
what
have
do
a
we think?
pool.
It's only a foot. You know, it's again.
Yeah.
I know there's no other pools back there, but what do we think?
Yeah.
It also has a 4-foot apron. Oh, so they counted the apron actually, right?
Yeah, I
So
think that because.
I think they counted the apron, that's right.
Right, because that's
they?
part of your structure.
Yeah.
That's probably where the fence is gonna go.
Hmm.
That's a good point.
I mean, you can put a fence a foot off the property line, right? You don't have to put a fence with a setback, do you? I mean, there's a lot of perimeter fences, so.
No, as long as it's on your property, and
Right.
most people usually install it a little bit inward on their property from the
Right.
property line, just so that I know this just because my husband had a fence installed last year, and they recommend it so that it limits disputes between neighbors.
It looks like on this plan, they're planning to put it right on the line.
Yeah. Which again, that's their prerogative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it shows it on the line.
So what do we think?
For 1 feet, I will assume that we should approve it. That's my opinion.
No, I'm with you.
Especially if you look at Google Map and where this is and all the woods on the back here, there's nothing there really behind the pool.
Yeah, that looks good.
How about a motion?
sorry, can I just ask, I don't know if it's my screen and it's just fuzzy or for everybody else, but are you sure that the 14 feet is from the
No,
fence line
yeah,
to the pool?
it actually, Joanne, after you said that, the arrow goes up to
To the pool.
And so it's a 10-foot, it's reduced to 10 feet.
Right, with the apron, it's gonna be 10
Right,
feet.
so it's actually 5 feet that you're losing on the side yard setback.
I still don't have a problem with it, but I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page about that.
That's a good
Yeah,
catch.
the problem is that they don't show the critical dimension on this drawing. They should. Because that's what we are approving.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the pool is the structure, right? So the apron is just being shown for detail. I mean, you can put flagstones there for, it's ground, it's at ground level. It's not a structure, right?
Yeah, you know, I think you're right. I know that a deck or a porch is considered part of the structure or a structure. And I know a pool is a structure.
Pool is, but I don't think a concrete,
Apron,
slab and,
yeah,
at grade level is considered a
right.
structure.
I would tend to agree with you.
And I think that's why they took the dimension to the pool.
Any
They did the
motions?
same on the side.
Well, we got three options.
And there's no wetland issues, I don't think, right? Because that would be on this map. Oh, wait,
Necessarily
flooding
be
vegetated wetland,
on,
I see it, yeah.
it wouldn't necessarily be on that map. The Mass GIS wetlands layer is really an estimate of where wetlands might be.
Mhm.
But I think in this instance, that the conservation agent will also be weighing in on it, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to recommend.
Second, Will.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. Weeks,
Aye.
Zygmunt,
Aye.
Kedem,
All right.
Wolf,
Aye.
and Stetson's and I as well. All right. Well, no real chair updates today. How about planning director updates?
None today.
All right,
Motion
well,
to adjourn, Kevin.
Second.
you beat me to the punch. Very good. It's a long one. Thank you all. Weeks,
Second. Oh, aye.
Kedem,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zygmunt,
Aye.
and Stetson's and I as well. Thank you all for all your participation tonight. It was a late one.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good
Yeah.
evening.
Everyone.